All right, welcome into another edition of Carps Corner, special Buckeye edition here as we are getting ready to prepare and preview the spring game. And so how much does the spring game really matter anymore? You look across college football, the landscape of it, what do they really mean? It used to be there was a time where you'd play 4 legitimate quarters. People would line up. Sometimes you divide up teams, draft your offenses and defenses. Other times you'd sit there, first offense and second defense on one team, second offense, first defense on another team, and have them battle it out and, legitimately keep score. But the reality is, as you look into spring ball, most of the work is ultimately getting done in practice. And then they have some controlled scrimmages where you're going to sit there and you're going to work on situations. And that's what these coaches want to see. They want to see situations, and they want to try to control the environment to make sure and to make certain the players aren't getting hurt, but still getting the work in. So there's been a lot of questions this spring. People are trying to figure out, and it's not the CJ Shrouds, as I've talked about. It's not Jackson Smith and Jigba. Heck, it's not Marvin Harrison Jr. You're not worried about, the receivers, the quarterbacks, the guys who have been stars. You're not worried about Henderson and guys like that, but it's the unknown. That's what you want to have an idea of and something to be able to talk about going into the summer. The coaches want to kind of have a feel for what type of team they're going to have in camp, understanding that a lot's going to change. But hey, we've tried some of these things, saw some glimmers of hope. There were some things we tried that, looked like it didn't work at all. And so let's scrap that. So we're not going to waste time this summer drawing stuff up and trying to figure everything out and what we're going to do with that. So they can hone it down as they try to, take the offense, take the defense, and then tailor packages to the specific players. Because each year, the iteration of the offense and defense are going to be different based upon the skill sets of the guys that are playing and ultimately where their strengths are. You don't change your playbook, but you maybe add in certain things and maybe you call things a different way on either side of the ball based on the fact maybe you have a great offensive line, maybe you're great pass blocking, maybe you've got some great interior defensive linemen, great safeties, strong linebackers, weak corners, whatever it might be. Like, how do we hide our deficiencies and then accent our strengths? And that is what ultimately the spring is about, and training camp is, taking your offense and your defense and the package that you have, and then tailoring it to the guys to let them go out there and see what they can do. And so we'll get into the setup. They're basically going to split, offense versus defense. And I'll get into why that is in a minute. It's a really smart move by Ryan Day. And Ryan Day is a really smart coach. And I'm going to start with this, before we get into the defense, talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about CJ Shroud, what he's been doing, how he's been looking offensive line wise. And then got a question that came in on YouTube as well on the channel here. And like I said, if you guys have questions, fire away. I'll do my best to answer them here on social media, about the linebackers. So we'll dive into that as well. But starting with Ryan Day, I think Buckeye fans realize how lucky they are to have this guy. He is a phenomenal offensive mind. And that's great. You can find those guys. There's not a bazillion of them, but there are guys who are great offensive minds. But he's also a great delegator, and he's a great operator of a head coach, and he relates really well to players. And just looking at this entire week, spring ball, the final week, is supposed to be kind of a little bit of a celebration of the passing of spring. You're kind of getting ready to kick off the summer and really start into that next year of football. And so it always has a lighter feel to it. You get the coaches convention, coaches clinic comes up, and all these high school coaches are there coming up to watch their guys and to learn a little bit. You've got big name speakers, like Zach Taylor coming in, Bob Stoops, a number of other guys. And so it has a unique feel to it. That's kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, get a little bit of work done earlier in the week. And then you make the spring game, call them like the spring carnivals now, because it's more entertainment to get out there for the fans and show a little bit. And obviously you want to get the guys some work and let them work under, game-ish situations, but it has a light feel to it. And all that changed, with the passing of Dwayne Haskins this weekend. So Ryan did a fantastic job of handling it, pivoted off maybe the tone and some of the things that were going to happen, and focused more on Dwayne, focused on his team, and to make sure that they were in a good mental space, his staff, and to make sure the spring game was respectful to Dwayne in the way they're going to honor him. And I'm, you never want to say you're excited for this, but I know that they're going to do a fantastic job in honoring him and doing justice to what he did for Ohio State. And the fact that he always wanted to be a Buckeye. And so it's a tough week, and it changed from that lighthearted feeling to obviously something that's much heavier and much more important, given the gravity of a loss of a life of a man who's under 25 years old. So we're incredibly lucky to have Ryan Day here. Been around a lot of coaches, do it a lot of different ways. Ryan has his own unique style, but he gets it on the offensive end. He hires really good coaches, and he does a great job managing his team and really understanding the personalities and what the expectations are. So kudos to him, and he's going to do a great job this spring. I want to start out with something and talk a little bit about Jim Knowles' defense and why I think it's going to be special. Because this is what a lot of people have asked about. Had a ton of questions. How good is this defense going to be? Will it be better than last year? Oh, no, I see this guy's out there. They're not going to be better. He's bad, or he's this. Like, a lot of it is football, like any other sport, is understanding the talent that you have, having your scheme, and then finding a way to best utilize that talent and put them in the positions to have success. So Jim Knowles' scheme is really good. He has a system. I really like it. And, we've talked about moving around, that Jack or Leo linebacker, which is, a lot of been Jack Sawyer, Mitchell Melton has done a lot of it. Both of those guys have been really, really good. And so that's going to give you versatility because you can move those guys around and you can disguise some things, because the premise of a lot of this Jim Knowles defense is the disguise. We're going to show you this and give you this. And this, when you think this is coming, we zip over here, and it slows the quarterbacks down. It'll slow down the offensive coordinators, but you have to have smart players, and you have to have players that are versatile and athletic. So Jack Sawyer gives you that up front. Joe Melton gives you that up front as well. Both of those guys, very, very talented players, and can play on 2 feet and can also play in a 3-point. So that's going to help you disguise the box, the linebackers and defensive line. And so I showed you some clips of that from Oklahoma State with Jim Knowles' time they were playing the Sooners. Now I'm going to take a look at the back end. And a guy named Josh Proctor. And like I talked earlier, Legend Cavazos and Bryson Shaw both entered the transfer portal. Bryson Shaw played a lot last year. Really probably wasn't expected to play that much early in his career. He's a guy that could have rotated last year, but all of a sudden, Josh Proctor gets hurt. Josh Proctor goes down. Bryson Shaw has the battlefield promotion, and then he's out there and probably in a little over his head. And the defense, they had tailored it and putting Josh Proctor in a position for him to succeed based upon his unique gifts. And so when you lose a guy early in the season like that, and the other guy is a very different player, maybe not as rangy, not as athletic, you can make some plays and can be instinctive. And you combine that with young players all over the place, and there's some breakdowns up front. It was a little bit of a disaster waiting to happen. And so this year, linebackers are more experienced. I've talked about those guys, and I'll answer a question, with regards to them too, because everyone worries about this 4-2-5 and will it hold up in the Big Ten. But the back end, the safeties, Josh Proctor being back is a game changer. Why is that a game changer, you ask? Well, Josh Proctor is incredibly rangy. Number one, he can hit. He's a physical tackler back there. We've watched clips of him knocking dudes out all over the place. So he's an enforcer. He has range. He can go from numbers to numbers, covering the middle of the field. He can play a little bit of man coverage too. But his ability to disguise and show, maybe when he's down in the box, bailing out, maybe he's high, can run across the field and play the other half of the field. And so he can do these things because of that speed and length. We call it the range. He has great range to be able to do that. And so you can show him over here and all of a sudden dive back, slide to the other side of the field, and it can change the whole outlook of the play for the quarterback. And so I'm going to show, one play pre-snap and then one play post-snap. And so we'll throw this up here. And as you look at this play and you take a look at it, you see there's at the top of the screen there, there's the 2 receivers and the tight end. And they're all lined up. And then you've got a defensive back, corner on the outside, nickel, and then a safety all lined there. And looks like they're playing man coverage to the quarterback. Like this nickel's down pretty tight. Safety's right there in the middle. And I have the nickel circled in this situation because they're going to bail him out. Now, Josh Proctor's plays safety, but seeing him in practice, like this is the ability that he has in what he can provide, showing man, showing down in the box, and then being able to bail out. And so now take a break and think about what you're seeing your quarterback. You're seeing man coverage. And that means, okay, these guys are isolated. We're going to try to run some rub routes, some pick routes to get guys moving around, because if you're playing man, those are effective route combinations. And that's what I'm going to anticipate. Maybe on the other side, we've got more of a zone concept, or maybe one of the guys is going to run more of a zone concept. And that's who my primary read will be. So now we'll throw this back up. This is a second half into the down. Now you can see the arrow that I've drawn back there. That's the nickel, who could be the safety in this situation. Ohio State, I've seen them do this now with Josh Proctor. They're moving around because of his athleticism and his gifts, where he can go play at 5 yards and then bail back. Maybe playing in the middle of the field, maybe playing a deep half and cover 2, but it changes the whole outlook for the quarterback of, hey, which safety was down? Maybe I thought they're playing, one safety deep man. All of a sudden now it's 2 deep. Maybe, he's flying across the field, but his range, his ability to turn, flip his hips, and gain ground to get back where he needs to go. And in doing that, he doesn't jeopardize his coverage because he has the athleticism to do it. And so just think about that and how hard it is when you have to line up at 5 yards and you might need to be the deepest guy on your side or the deepest guy in the middle. You have to have extreme athleticism to be able to do that and read the quarterback while he's still playing. Josh Proctor has that ability. And that is going to be one of the game changers for this defense. And so you combine that, with 4 really nice corners and the fact that, you've got Cam Brown and Denzel Burke, who looked really good last year. You got Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson, who are a little bit younger, but are really tall and athletic and can run. And so you can play a lot of man, you can play some zone, you can change it up. And that's going to give you the versatility. But a lot of it starts on the back end with Josh Proctor, front end, as we talked about earlier in a previous episode, more Jack Sawyer. So I love what those guys are doing. Just wanted to kind of give a little description and showing that. Some more on the defense. They've been introducing, there's a little bit of a 3 linebacker set. And you think about this, the Big 12 and most of college football now runs 3 and 4 wide receivers. So this is why Jim Knowles runs a 4-2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. But you're going to play teams, the Wisconsins, the Illinois, Michigan's to a certain extent, Iowa, Minnesota gives you a little bit of it. Penn State can even give you a little bit of it from time to time, where they'll get in more traditional sets, 2 tight ends, maybe a fullback, maybe 2 tight ends and a fullback, 3 tight ends on the field. And with that, you have to match personnel. It's called matching likes. And so you want to get like people on the field to be able to stop that. Ryan Day loves doing it because it puts the defense in a bind. You have to start rotating and substituting guys in. And so, naturally, you're going to have a 3 linebacker set. You'll pull that 5th DB out. You'll slide into a more, traditional linebacker look, which is, basically what we ran in college about half the time. So you got some options there. Who's that 3rd linebacker coming in? Could it be Taraja Mitchell? Could it be E.A. Paliote? And I butcher his name every time. I just call him E.A. at practice. But he could be a guy, assuming he's healthy and ready to go for the season. Or one of the guys who I think has been getting some run there who would also have a chance is Reid Carrico. And, I believe 2nd-year player out of Ironton, has looked pretty good. And so he might even have a chance to be that 3rd linebacker. And it's not something you're going to use all the time, short yardage. And then in specific games when matchups are appropriate, but they will have that ready. They will have that available. So everybody who's super concerned about, this defense won't hold up. Jim Knowles isn't an idiot. He's no dummy. He understands you've got to find a way that if other teams are going big personnel, we'll have to go big personnel too. The problem came last year, especially against Team Up North, Michigan, the final game of the season. You have to have the healthy bodies to be able to do it. And the linebacking core was so decimated that's where some of those issues came. But, this year, much, much deeper there with some of these younger guys coming along. So that's, part of it. And then I'll answer this YouTube question that was thrown out to me. It talked about this, the question was kind of, you, Schlegel, and Hawk were really dominant linebacking core. You guys are all 3 really good. We've had individual good linebackers from time to time, but we haven't had a group collectively that's been as good since you guys. Is that, a product of recruiting, development, whatever it is? Why is that the case? And so here's part of it. Number one, you play, two linebackers a lot of times now, because the way the game has changed. And so we did that. I would slide up and do a little bit of what Jack Sawyer did, playing a 2-point off the edge, move around. I could drop and do some things, give you some versatility. And so that helped, and AJ was great in coverage, and, we could do some things, and Schlegs was our thumper inside. But the real unique thing about it for us is all three of us were the same age. And so you saw that a little bit a couple years ago at Ohio State, when you had 4 seniors, that came through with Baron Browning and Tuff and Pete Warner and Justin Hilliard, and Schlegs, AJ and I, we all were great friends. We all got along. Our communication was on point, and we were just all the same age. And so it's tough to kind of see guys who have played 3+ years, together, and all of you have played a lot of ball. I mean, Schleich started at Air Force for 2 years before he got here. AJ and I were basically 3-year starters, and, we all were tight and good friends. So like the communication was really, really there. And that kind of helped elevate the play, maybe even another level, but it's hard to kind of pair that up and time that up to where, and coaches, frankly, really, I don't know if you really like that, because if all 3 guys leave, now you're starting from square one again, which ultimately happened. And that, gave birth to Marcus Freeman and James Laurinaitis, and the rest is history with those guys. But it's really hard to kind of find that, whether it's, any position grouping, lineman, linebacker, defensive backs, whatever it might be, offensive line, to have a lot of seniors all there together who have grown up and really played. And that's what I think is kind of separated. And heck, it's been almost 16, 17 years, since our old butts were out there. So I get that. I love the nostalgia. And I appreciate the compliment, but that's kind of why. And it's really just a matter of timing, because it doesn't happen all that much. Now I want to look to the offensive side for the spring game. What to expect there. So it's going to be offense versus defense. CJ Shroud isn't going to play a lot. They're going to want to get him out. And, part of that is a couple of reasons. Number one, we've got an offensive line that the first group of guys really, really good. Paris Johnson at tackle, Donovan Jones at guard, Luke Whippler at center, Matthew Jones. Those guys, they look good. Dwan, like they're really big and they look really good. And so those guys, you want to see them work together a little bit in a game situation against, a really good defensive line that I think is going to surprise some people this year, with Ohio State. The problem is the depth behind it, isn't quite there, due to some injuries, the retirement of Harry Miller, and him stepping away. Like, he's a really good player that would have been in the mix. And so it's tough to find 10 good ones. And so they want to get CJ out. And I'm guessing part of that is they want to try to get some work with Devin Brown and Kyle McCord to see how those guys look behind that first defensive line, to make sure that you're giving them an adequate chance to go out there and have success so you can evaluate them. This is really, really hard to evaluate quarterbacks when they have 1,001, 1,002, and like, ball had better be out or you're getting sacked. Like, there's not going to be really any blitzing. I don't think there's going to be anything like that, but it's just tough because the pressure will be so great just due to the fact the second offensive line, a little bit young, a little bit beat up, and not quite to that level. And it's tough when you start mixing, matching guys in there. And so watching that offensive line work together, seeing some of these guys pull and move around. I love what Justin Fry has done, the new offensive line coach, with pulling and getting some guys moving, providing some different looks for the defense. And so watching these guys integrate together will be big. And then I want to see what, these quarterbacks, like Kyle McCord, 5-star guy, really, really good player, how he looks when you put him, mix in some of the first group of receivers, and you leave that offensive line in there for him. And maybe you get Devin Brown some reps with them. But so it's not a situation where they're just taking sacks or scrambling. Like, they actually have legitimate time to throw the football and get through their reads. Like, that's a big piece of it. And so that's kind of the expectations for the spring game, how I think it's ultimately going to look. Like I said, Ryan Day has talked about the structure. It's going to be offense versus defense, a little less traditional, maybe not as quite as competitive as you would like. Most likely running clock in the second half, and a couple of traditional quarters, in the first half, to get you there, get a little taste, get everybody some reps, but get them out of there healthy and feeling good. And so I'll get a post-spring breakdown, post-spring game wrap up, kind of talk a little bit about that next week and see where everything's going as we continue to kind of grind through the summer here and get into the summer rather in Carps Corner. So any questions? Throw them in here in the comments on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, bcarp3, at Bobby Carpenter, Roman numeral 3 on Instagram. Give me any of your questions. I'll keep posting stuff. Thanks for all the support, the liking, the comments, all those things. It's been really terrific. So really, really appreciate it, Buckeye Nation. Enjoy it. Everybody who's watching. Appreciate it. Tune in next time, and we'll break some more of this down. Thanks.